my name is Lily Roy, and I'm here to discuss waste. You've given me your questions, and I've answered them to the best of my ability. I hope you enjoy. So your first question is, why do you think a throwaway society is more prevalent in the Western countries than other countries? In the US, Canada, and many countries in Europe, we don't produce many of our goods. They're imported, which makes it so many of us aren't exposed to the work that goes into producing a good. The average American citizen also earns on average a much higher salary than that of the average employee in an Eastern country. So the combination of our higher income and our privileged attitude towards production leads to us wasting more. And there are many countries around the world that prioritize having a culture that practices responsible waste disposal. Germany, for example, has created mandatory waste sorting policies and recycling incentives that have in turn reduced their waste quantities. However, in the West, particularly North American countries, there's not much of a focus on creating better disposal methods. And while we do recycle here in the US, it's not widely used, especially since recycling companies around the country have begun to eliminate certain materials from their list of recyclable goods. This is partly due to the fact that China will no longer take our recyclable goods, and a majority of American plastic can't actually be recycled. The plastics provided by corporations such as Dasani, Coca-Cola, and Nestle are too complex of a mix to be recycled properly. And in addition to that, responsible disposal is just not widely practiced by our people. It's the norm to throw everything in the garbage because it's quick, we don't have to think about it, and garbage cans are more common than recycling bins. Columbia University states that according to the EPA, of the 267.8 million tons of municipal solid waste generated by Americans in 2017, only 94.2 million tons were recycled or composted. And since our country prides itself on providing freedom of the consumer, we have very few laws and policies regulating our disposal of the goods. And that brings me to your second question. Do you feel that consumerism is getting better or worse in the US? I feel like it's getting worse. Our society has always been big on consumption, but within the last 10 to 15 years, consumerism culture has risen. A large part of that has been the extreme rise in popularity of fast fashion. The EPA estimates that in 2018, landfills received a total of 11.3 million tons of clothing alone. The goods sold on sites such as Shein, H&M, and Zara are cheap to produce and therefore cheap to buy. The appeal of low-priced yet trendy and desirable goods reach consumers all around the world, and it's become increasingly more mainstream. However, cheap production costs lead to cheaply produced goods. Many of the goods sold on these sites and stores are low-quality items whose only purpose is to match a very temporary trend. Once the trend is gone or the quality has perished, into the trash they go. And with these cheap production costs comes a larger quantity of clothes that can be produced and sold, and therefore more clothes to end up in the landfill. Your third and final question is, if you could change an established industry for the better, like how they produce or market their products, what would it be and how would you change it? While there are many industries that I wish I could change for the better, construction is the industry I feel needs to change the most. The construction industry generates about 2 billion tons of waste a year globally. And while it's understandable that the demand for construction has grown due to a rise in population and economic development, we should also consider that it takes resources and energy to support these projects. As our demand for these resources rise, we should be doing everything in our power to reuse and repurpose these materials so that we don't contribute any more unnecessary waste to the landfills. According to the EPA, roughly 143.8 million tons of unused construction materials end up in landfills. It's absolutely absurd that there's energy and resources put into making these construction materials. But meanwhile, there are so many existing construction materials that'll never get used. What construction companies need to realize is that repurposing and reusing materials is cost-effective and energy-effective. The government either needs to pass laws that limit the amount of waste that construction companies produce, or the construction companies need to take responsibility and start repurposing their materials. I propose that warehouses fit to hold these materials be built all around the country so that before a construction project, the contractors and the builders may visit the inventory and purchase these unused materials for cheap. After the project is completed, the remaining unused materials would be sent back to the warehouses where they can be used for another job. Doing so would create jobs, reduce costs for construction companies, and most importantly, eliminate waste. It's important that as we build our houses, we also care about our home, the earth. Thank you for taking the time to watch my video, and I just want to say thank you for providing this scholarship. Bye!